Man is not forsaken on earth. He is a child of God engaged in constructive work, temporarily clothed in flesh. He is a student in a meritorious school where he must learn to raise himself up. The human struggle is his opportunity, his set of tools, and his textbook. How childish to imagine that the mere ringing down of the curtain would settle transcendental questions of the infinite. One life is but a single act, one body a garment, one century a day, one task an experience, one triumph an acquisition, one death a breath of renovation. How many lives? How many bodies? How many centuries? How many tasks? How many triumphs? How many deaths are still allotted to us? These astounding messages from the spirits via a human medium convey the message of Spiritism. Spiritism emerged in the mid-19th century through the findings and philosophy of French educator Hippolyte Léon Denisard Rivail, also known as Allan Kardec. Contemporaries of Allan Kardec included Spiritist philosophers Léon Denis and renowned author Arthur Conan Doyle. Spiritism followers explore the nature, origin, and destiny of souls, often through afterlife communication conveyed via a medium. Throughout Latin America and parts of Europe, Spiritism is known and practiced by millions of people. Numerous books have been written that provide insights into the afterlife and the soul's immortality. One such volume is No Solar, or The Astral City, by Spirit André Luis through Spiritist medium Francisco Cândido Xavier. Francisco Cândido Xavier was a well-known Brazilian philanthropist who co-authored more than 400 books. In The Astral City, former medical doctor André Luis speaks from the afterlife of his awakening and healing within a spiritual society near the Earth's surface. This story describes not only the continuation of life beyond the physical body, but more importantly, how heaven cares for each and every human soul. The following excerpt from The Astral City describes how André Luis was strengthened spiritually upon his rescue from the lower zones. Chapter 6 Precious Advice. The following day after the evening prayer, Clarence came to see me accompanied by my attendant. Radiating kindness, he asked affectionately, "How are you? A little better, I hope?" Like any patient on earth who suddenly finds himself the center of attention, I was moved to self-pity. Reverting to my old habit of abusing brotherly love, I began to complain. "I do feel a little better, but I'm still suffering a great deal. I hurt below my stomach, and I feel a strange sense of anguish in my heart. My cross has been heavy, my friends. I never knew I could withstand so much suffering. Now that I can think clearly again, I feel sure that these trials have sapped all of my remaining strength." Clarence listened attentively, not showing the least sign of impatience. He even seemed interested, and his attitude encouraged me to continue. "Not only that, my moral sufferings are really indescribable. Now that the outside storm has subsided thanks to the assistance I have received here, I've had to face a storm within my soul. What has become of my wife and children? I wonder whether my eldest child, my only son, has followed the plans I made for him. And what about my dear daughters and my wife, who was sure she would die of loneliness if we were ever parted? What of my wonderful wife? I can still feel her tears from my last moments on earth. I can't say how long I have been living this nightmarish separation. My continuous suffering has robbed me of all sense of time. Where is my poor wife, weeping beside cold ashes, or at the gates of death herself? What bitter sorrow! What a terrible fate for a man devoted to his family! Very few have gone through as much as I am sure. Why, even on earth, I suffered years of vicissitudes, bitter disappointments and infirmities, and was granted only a few hours of happiness in return. Then I was subjected to painful physical death, followed by unceasing torture in spirit and a never-ending succession of miseries and tears. Is there no meaning of attaining peace? As much as I may wish to adopt an optimistic attitude, I can't help feeling heavy-hearted and full of grief. What an unfortunate fate, generous benefactor! By that time, my feelings of self-pity had reached such proportions that my words gave way to tears. Clarence, however, rose calmly and asked simply, "My dear friend, do you really seek your spiritual cure?" I nodded in assent, and he went on. "Then learn not to speak so much of yourself and your sufferings. Self-pity is a symptom of mental illness, which is time-consuming and difficult to cure. It is imperative that you create new trains of thought and control your words. The only way to spiritual balance is to open your heart to the divine light. If you consider the necessary effort to be an oppressive burden or see the struggle for redemption as an imposition, it is a sure sign of spiritual blindness. The more you dwell on your own painful experiences, the more you bind yourself to them. You can be sure that the same Father whom shelters and watches over you will also care for your loved ones on earth. We should certainly regard the family as a sacred institution, but always keep in mind that it is just a small branch of the universal family under the loving guidance of one divine Father. You can count on us to resolve your present problems and sketch plans for your future, but neither you nor we have the time to waste on your complaints. We, in this colony, accept the hardest toil as a welcome opportunity for ascent, remembering why we plod along, weighted down with debts that Providence is surpassing in its love. If you, too, wish to stay with us, you must learn to think properly. Meanwhile, my tears had dried. His words had brought me back to my senses. I was ashamed of my own weakness, and I adopted a different attitude. While in the flesh, continued Clarence, didn't you compete for lucrative positions, knowing their advantages? Didn't you appreciate the legitimate means of increasing the welfare of your loved ones? Weren't you engaged in obtaining just fees in the interest of adding to the comfort and stability of your family? Here, the program is the same, only the details differ. On earth, conventionalities and monetary gains are the ruling forces, whereas here we aim at constructive work with lasting benefits to the immortal spirit. We look on suffering as a means to enrich the soul, and on each suffering as a step towards our divine goal. Can you see the difference? Weak souls resist service and remain inactive, venting their complaints to all. Strong ones, though, accept the task given them as constructive steps on the path towards perfection. Mind you, no one will blame you for missing your earthly family or would ever think of extinguishing your source of sublime feelings. Nevertheless, you must remember that tears of despair help nothing. If you really love your earthly family and wish to be useful to them, you must first accept your present condition cheerfully. A long pause ensued. Clarence's advice had changed the current of my thoughts, and I began to ponder on his wisdom. While I was still immersed in deep reflection, my benefactor, like a father who forgets the waywardness of his child and recommences a lesson with the same serenity, asked again with a bright smile, "Well, how are you now? A little better?" Pleased and comforted to feel I was forgiven, like a little boy anxious to learn, I replied, "I am better now, to better understand the divine will." Open-minded viewers, it's been a pleasure to have your company on today's selections from the Astral City, Chapter 6, Precious Advice on Words of Wisdom.